Want to know how to make your company better for your people? Ask them. An employee listening strategy can help you better understand what your people want, what they need, what their challenges are, and what you can do better. But where do you start? This is the Culture Clinic, where my co-founder Joe and I are relentlessly learning from HR experts on how to build a culture where people love to work. My name is Skai, and I'm one of the co-founders here at Guusto. I'm joined today by Shelley DaCosta, an HR expert in the rewards and recognition space. Shelley, ready to dive into today's topic?
Sure.
Okay, creating an employee listening strategy. So what's the best conversations you've ever had with one of your direct reports?
So many over the years. I think if it depends on the different organizations, kind of where I was at and what was going on. Like if I go back to days at hospital in the public sector, it was a lot about teaching and engaging or sparking initiatives. So when I felt like, we left that conversation and I'd really sparked some initiative for people to leave the office and say, yeah, I can take that on. That's great that I coached that way. That would feel really good. Especially because, back in that day, we were just starting some initiatives back with diversity and employment equity and pay equity. And so it was a fair bit of teaching around some of that. Then IKEA, again, would be teaching or engaging or having an impact on that employee, that you felt like you communicated and got your message across. BlackBerry, it was a lot around my best conversations were where I was motivating employees and having great career discussions, whether it was talking them to coming into the reward space and working on my team or taking chances. And, I used to think about it as like turning on their confidence and their abilities, watching kind of the penny drop where they're like seeing them want to go out and, leap tall buildings for the organization and for themselves and their career. And RSA would have been fairly similar, like BlackBerry. A lot of times, because I'm older and have that career path, you're using stories to help people understand and to grow. And you don't want to solve their problems, but you want to motivate, engage, and allow them to solve their own problems. So it's how to spark that interest and give them those tools. Overall, I'd say the best ones were when I really listened, because that's my weak spot. So when I felt like, hey, I listened and we both heard one another, those were really big.
And so I'm just going to kind of dig in there a little bit. Do you have a specific conversation that you remember where you got some really interesting insight from an employee and how that conversation manifested, like how you were able to kind of get that insight from the employee?
So there's one case I can recall really clearly, some decisions we were making. It wasn't my employees, so to speak, on my team. It was, we were doing some focus groups, and it became clear that in the focus groups, we weren't getting enough information. People weren't comfortable enough. And so we said, we put out the offer there that if anybody else wanted to come and talk to us one-on-one or two-on-one and felt more comfortable doing that, then please come and do so. And so this employee, I think she brought along a colleague, wanted to talk about some decisions we were making actually with recognition and service awards, and that we would be changing up service awards and putting more into recognition and how we were going to do that and what it meant to her. And it came down to the fact that plaques that were on the wall, because we were going so virtual, would now just be someplace you could find on the internet, so you could see that person had completed 25 years or et cetera. And this employee was so passionate about how much they disagreed with that. And what was good about the conversation was I was able to hear her story. And her story was that from the minute she walked in the building on her first day, had orientation and was walked around the building, she saw this wall with the plaques of employees that had worked there 10, 15, 20, 25 years. And she set that as a goal for herself. I am going to work for this company for 25 years because I'm going to love it and I'm going to throw everything out to it. And she did that. And she said she saw her colleagues and other, people she went to university with changing around careers. And she's like, no, I'm staying with this company. I love it. And I'm going to get my 25 years. And she says, next year, my name's going to be on that plaque. It's my 25 years. I've done it. I've got here. And you're going to take it down. I'm not going to get to see it. And the new people coming in aren't going to get to see it. And so it was, we were able to resolve some of the issues, but it was to hear her story and to give her that space. Like I think even if the plaques weren't going to be up there, she got to tell her story and say why she was so passionate about it, what it meant to her, and what else could we do. So she still had that wonderful feeling for her organization, that she didn't feel like, it's all in vain. Now this organization is going to turn around and not treat me well after all I've done. And so that one sticks out for me, because I just kind of had no idea that somebody could be so attached to something like that until you heard the story.
And story goes such a long way in kind of communicating kind of the importance of whether it's a recognition program or whether it's some other program. You can look at all the data, but oftentimes you need to complement that with the stories behind kind of what employees value. And so what in your mind, Shelley, goes into an employee listening strategy?
I think just that, just by virtue of it's a strategy, think about it, right? It doesn't just happen. We can't just say, oh, well, we're going to do some surveys and let's pop out these surveys 4 times a year and this is what we're going to measure. Like, you really need to think about it and have a plan. And what do you want to hear from employees? And what are you going to do with what you hear from it? What's your how and your why and your what? I once had a leader who said, we're very, very careful in this organization about what we ask and do employee surveys, because we can't change many things. We don't have the budget. There's not a lot of stuff we can move around and change. So I almost don't want to hear what they want because I can't fulfill it. It was like, there's something a little wrong about that, but we can work on it. So I think, you want to understand communication as a tool in terms of two-way aspect. Will they be honest with you and open with you if you haven't been honest and open with them? And is that something you want to measure? Do they trust you? Right? So all of those things, you have to think about the different ways to communicate, verbally and written and in your newsletters and all of that, and different ways to listen. I often think of, in one-on-ones and surveys and listening and things, we forget about the fact that not only are we like leaders or HR leaders where we have these direct reports, we're often a direct report ourselves. And so I'm often coaching leaders to think about, well, what do you want from your leader above, right? When you have that one-on-one with them, what feels good? What do you want to hear? What do you want to talk about? What do you want to say? So then think about that with your employee, because now you're in that role.
I love that, Shelley, kind of helping leaders just kind of put themselves in on the other side of the equation. And it makes me think of interviews, right? And when you have younger managers that are part of kind of interview panels and they haven't gone through it before, just getting them to think about like, hey, like you interviewed here, you interviewed in a bunch of other places. What did you like about those experiences, right? And so like once they kind of like go through the interview process kind of on the other side of the desk, they can kind of see both sides and then, we'll apply just some common sense.
Yeah. And, when you talk about interviews, it's that full sense too of understanding when you're the interviewer, you are also being interviewed by this employee who is deciding whether or not we're a good fit. Like, do I want to give you guys my all? Like, do I want to come and work for you? So both parties are being interviewed, but that's often not the case. People are like, well, why are you asking me a question? You wait till the end and then I might ask you if you have a question. And it should really be that two-way listening. Are you hearing me? What is this going to really be like to work here? Conversation. So yeah, you can apply that same thing to one-on-ones.
Often, most interviews that I do don't hold questions until the end for the candidate, right? And get them to kind of, maybe I'll ask kind of 1 or 2 questions up front, but I'll get them to kind of start asking the questions throughout the interview process to kind of engage. Total side tangent, but like coming back to like the listening strategy, you said something kind of interesting there around an employer being afraid to ask because they weren't going to be able to act on any of the feedback. But I think there's some good insight in there. If you are going to put together a listening strategy, you do have to complement that with like, hey, what's the plan to act on this? Because if it can be counterproductive if you are asking for a bunch of feedback and then doing nothing about it.
How many times have we heard from employees, I don't want to participate in this. Why? What do you care? Like, why am I going to give you this information? Nothing changes. That's the big one we always see here. Nothing changes. So why am I going to participate in this? Why am I going to tell you how I feel or what's going on or what's good or bad if it's not going to be heard? So really great employees that have some of that listening strategy down pat and have those surveys down pat, when they take initiatives and changes, they actually post them. We heard that you don't like this. Here's your voice. And they show in the action, like we don't think there's enough signage, da 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 da. So now there's signage, and then there's a little note beside it that says, "We heard you," or at least silly things. But it's like, wow, they actually listened. They read those surveys. They did something with them. They went somewhere. Or every opportunity that the CEO or the executive team or whatever gets to throw into, we heard that you don't like town halls, so we're only going to do 2 a year now. Or we heard that, you don't feel that we're communicating clearly. So now here's our new communication strategy. Or we heard, that just constantly saying, we really do value this and we're acting on it. Here's how we're acting on it. As well as just, here's the results of the surveys coming out to all the leaders, and then the leaders sitting down with their individual teams and saying, here's the results of the survey. This is where we're doing really, really great. And this is where we're really not doing well, what we need to do about it, how we're going to do it, what we're going to work on. And we can't fix everything. So here's our 3 priorities this year. And then we'll see how we do on them on next year's survey, and then keep going. And, but it's really digging away and thinking of it in a strategic way, because we go, oh, no, that's okay. On the call, people always speak up, but it's always the same people. And they're just speaking up so that somebody can hear them. So-and-so participates because they're a participator, but that's not who I want to hear from. I want to hear from those other people. I want to hear from those quiet people. So think about your strategy for the quiet people. And you've got to create a safe space, whether it's surveys, whether it's one-on-ones. You want to provide psychological safety for people so they don't feel threatened by telling the truth.
Yeah, totally. So what do you feel are the most effective touch points for receiving employee feedback?
Okay, so it depends on your strategy, right? Like, what are you expecting feedback on? Like, do you want feedback on the leader's performance? So that would be surveys or one-on-ones or exit interviews, right? To find out, how is Skai doing as a leader, and how do you feel about this? Or how is your leader? That's one of the questions in a company-wide engagement survey. Might be, my leader is effective at delivering conducting one-on-ones with me. I understand where I go in this organization thanks to coaching conversations with my leader or whatever. And then you're actually getting a leader score. But maybe you want feedback on senior leadership. So again, focus groups are a great spot that way, surveys, et cetera. Do you feel like you can trust the senior leadership? Do you feel like they know what they're doing? Do you feel like the goals set for the organization and objectives make sense? Do you understand them? And do you feel like we have open, honest, transparent communication in the organization? That's another good one for a broad survey or even a focus group. If you want feedback on how a meeting went or a town hall, sometimes that can be done right there in the meeting, right there in the sense, and little surveys at the end or show of hands who liked this, who didn't like this. But it's all about making sure you create that safe space, because there's people that are going to speak up in a town hall and there's people that aren't. So if I think of that example, having that focus group, but getting a sense that people aren't really telling me what's going on, or they're embarrassed or they're uncomfortable with it. So having that, that open door kind of thing.
I think one of the critical things there that you touched on is the time period between kind of when an event happens and when the feedback is received, right? Because if we're doing kind of an annual engagement survey, right, there's so much that happens throughout the year. And there's going to be a recency bias to kind of like, hey, what's happened in the last few weeks? And so if you are kind of making changes or rolling out different programs and whatnot, having mechanisms to do more kind of pulse-like surveys and more ability to kind of get real-time feedback. I think think about sports teams, right? And just how on the floor or on the ice or wherever they're kind of playing, like feedback is happening so fast in real time as the game's kind of developing, and how effective that is. Sure, they'll go and kind of watch game tape afterwards and whatnot, but if they don't have that real time feedback, that's how they're kind of making the most improvements.
Absolutely. It's like recognition. We know real-time recognition, on-the-spot recognition is really important for people. It's the same thing with feedback. It's the same thing, with asking people all these information. Your timing is really, really critical. For the little things that you can provide feedback right there in the moment, that's great. Or quarterly, or even, more than quarterly, those micro pulse surveys. We put in this big initiative. We want to see how it's going in Q1. We want to see how it's going in Q2. We want to see if it's gotten any better in Q3, that kind of thing. So we're going to keep going at that. But then, there's organizations that say, oh, well, we only do a big engagement survey every 2 years. Well, geez, with turnover, with everything else, like that's hard to follow. You're not going to get something you can really use with tangible results. And it's just too far apart. By the same token, the timing in terms of the cycle or what's going on in your organization when you choose to survey is also really important. Like I have seen where you might have a corporate head office that's responsible for, the vendor, whoever is going to do this big survey in a large organization. And they are saying, we are doing it in September. And that particular arm of the organization has something maybe negatively impacting employees happening in August. They've just planned that, there's only going to be a 2% increase this year, or there's not going to be a bonus payout, or we're going to have to, cut some of our numbers, however. And they're like, oh my God, this is like the worst possible time to ask their employees how they feel about working here. Can we, right? And so there's a bias, there's a recency bias in a very negative way there that, somebody's going to say, this really stinks because it's the worst week ever here. But what you really want to get at is what's it like in general working here? So you have to think of so many different things, as well as who can participate different times of the year. People are just too loaded down to take the time to, read that email, okay, participate, or go attend this focus groups. So you get the people attending the focus groups that you maybe their information isn't as important to you or as valid as a particular group you're asking for.
And so how effective do you feel engagement surveys are at accurately kind of gauging employee sentiment?
In larger organizations, it can be a really effective way of gauging sentiment about like a number of things: engagement, communication, trust, the diversity issues. You feel safe here, those kinds of things. But you really gotta do everything you can to get up that participation rate. You're striving for 75% or more, so it's meaningful for you because you want to take action on those, and you don't want to take major action on an initiative if in fact not all your employees feel that way about it, right? You got to kind of look at that. So you got to know that employees they got to trust that it's confidential, your survey. So you've got to do a lot of work around who's conducting it and why and how and where the data goes and how the data will be presented. And then sometimes small teams, the leader can't get the information because then you're kind of compromising confidentiality with open text questions and things like that. You want with the survey, again, there's got to be all the pieces around the communication of why we're doing it, what we hope to expect, what we expect from you filling it out. And you have to trust us that we will actually make changes based on what we hear. That's most critical. And yeah, it's just that trying to dissuade employees from, why do I fill this out? Nothing changes. You want them to really believe that we're reading this, we're taking it to heart, and it's an important action in this organization. So the more you participate, the more we know, and the more we can fix.
Did you ever have a time where engagement on kind of an annual survey was below 50%?
I don't know if I've ever seen it below 50% because we would like stand on our head and do like everything we could to get participation. It's fascinating. IKEA was amazing because we would, schedule employees to fill out the survey. Like, so if you were a cashier, you came in for your shift. If you came in early, we would ask you to come in 15 minutes early for your shift, and you would be paid for that 15 minutes. And there's a room that you can go in and log into the computer, answer it, and we would have milk and cookies, everything that we could do. And in a kind of informal way, the various store locations, the store managers would keep running tallies. Like, we've got 80% participation. We're at 85 right now. We're at 90. And there would almost be a competition. Did you participate? Did you participate? So that we could get that kind of participation. In other organizations, it could be as simple as keep the running tabs on what the participation is looking like and sending it out to the leaders. So only, 5% of your employees, Skai, have been responding to the employee survey this week. And, it closes on Friday. Here we are Wednesday. So can you send out a little reminder? Can you, tap people on the shoulder? Can you tell them how important this is? And, if employees see, well, wow, it's that important, right? And actually, that's a great time to do the one-on-ones in the employee story about last time when we did the survey, we heard this happened. And we took those results to heart. And that's how we have this amazing program that we have right now. We heard that mental health is a big issue for us. So now we've partnered. So who knows what could come out of this survey? So get your thoughts in there. That kind of thing really, really helps.
Love it. Great tips there. And so last question for you. How do you make time for kind of the one-on-one qualitative feedback from employees at scale?
Timing is so, like, even with surveys, too many surveys in a year, employees will, right? And the timing affects your participation. When you're talking about the one-on-ones, to me, the key piece is to free up the leaders to lead. Too many times leaders have a list this long of their own objectives, their own goals, all of those kinds of things that actually have nothing to do with leading employees. And so that's just so critical to free them up and help them understand that the most important job they have is leading. Like, there's nothing more important than that. The coaching the leaders in conducting one-on-ones, how to do performance feedbacks, open discussions, coaching your leaders in listening skills. So they're all, you know what I mean? That the one-on-one is not that employee goes, here I go to my one-on-one. I'm going to cancel it, or I don't want to go, or whatever it is, because this is just my leader telling me all my goals and objectives again, not listening to me and what's going on in my life, or what's happening, or how I feel about my job, or my objectives, or a career path discussion, all of that. Open door policies. And today it may not be open door, it may be open text, open call, all of those kinds of things. So people feel they can regularly come and talk, so that you have those one-on-ones. Because the scheduled one-on-ones are great. You have to kind of have those, but you also want to be able to have those conversations in the moment when it's really important. Something's really critical going on in my life right now. I don't want to wait till next week we have a one-on-one and bring it to your attention. If it's really important today, I want to feel comfortable I can somehow get a hold of you and talk about it.
For you as kind of like the HR leader, right? So large organization, how do you make time for one-on-ones throughout the organization at scale, right? So beyond just kind of helping your managers make time for their one-on-ones, how do you go out and kind of have conversations at scale?
Myself as the HR leader, let's say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think you have to be so visible. You have to let employees, see your face, have your name, be out there, and provide a million different ways for them to get in touch with you. Whether it's here on Slack and here's your email, and here's, times that you can connect with me, and here's my text, and here's different ways that, and then you got to build that trust. Cancel appointments and things like that. You have to build up that faith with that employee that what you say you will do, so they're coming to you because they're really, really upset with their leader, whatever it is. And so I have to act on that, or provide a reason why I'm not acting on it, and come back to them with some solutions or what's happened, etc. And I think a lot about providing a safe place, so an employee comes to you and they're able to vent, or they're able to talk about things in a good way, and they know that they're safe without recrimination, right? And, you often in HR, we have that first conversation where we're saying, anything you say is going to be confidential, unless I'm concerned that you're harming yourself or something of detriment to the organization in an extreme way or against the law, then I, may have to take action. Or it's a harassment case or something along those lines. But it's to build up that relationship so that people want to come to you, and then you get out there and attend other leaders' meetings, go to, outside of HR, go to other people's one-on-ones so people see the face, they see the name. You get introduced at the end. And by the way, Shelley's here and this is happening, and follow up with HR. It's that, it's having people feel they can talk to you and bring any information to you, and it'll just organically happen. And if it's not organically happen, then I would go out, find people in the lunchroom and make sure I kind of invite myself for coffee or talk to people, especially if there was something where you kind of hear something's brewing and you think it's a concern. Then we would do focus groups and, make sure we picked particular areas where we were concerned about, say, a leader or something like that, have some of their staff on the focus group. So, maybe they're there to talk about their benefits programs, but other things start to percolate up. And you've got to be prepared to take that and maybe take it aside and have a separate meeting or whatever. But it's taking the time. But again, it comes back to freeing me up to be able to do that in a good way, or freeing the leaders up or anything.
Awesome. Tons of great kind of takeaways here. Maybe you could kind of just summarize for us here, from the conversation. If I'm an HR leader thinking about putting together an employee listing strategy, what are kind of the top 2 tips that you think I should make sure that I'm kind of focused on?
Think about why you're doing it. What you expect from it, that it's just not so that you can show some numbers and say, 52% of our employees like our benefits and 95% of our employees like this. What are you going to do with that information? What are you seeking? Are you seeking it only so you know those numbers? Or are you seeking it to create great valuable change in your organization? And then I think the other big one is look at your timing around all of it. Like how many surveys you're having a year, how many other ways you're getting information from employees, because there can be burnout and just plain exhaustion. And then you kind of really hurt your strategy for employees to come forward. And I cannot say that you got to be open, honest, and transparent too. You've got to let them know why you're doing what you're doing so that employees trust. Otherwise, they're like, I don't think I'm going to participate.
Well, my big takeaway was around participation and all of the things that you kind of listed out there. So making sure that employees knew it was confidential, make sure they know why you're doing it, and that changes will actually be kind of acted upon and what won't be acted upon, right? So communicating kind of like, hey, we don't have budget to do all these things, and so these are the things that we're not going to be able to do. I liked your example around kind of like scheduling time for people to actually come in and do the survey. The competition elements, so getting different stores to kind of compete on their survey engagement or their participation rates, and then holding leaders accountable and sending them kind of messages that, hey, your division or department hasn't kind of reached the target for participation rates. So lots of great tips there. Love it all. Shelley, this has been a great conversation. Thanks so much for taking the time.
You're welcome, Skai.
If you want to build a culture that drives performance, check out Culture is the Ultimate Advantage, our free guide to creating a culture where your people feel seen, heard, and valued. Click the link in the description to get your copy. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And don't forget to recognize somebody for a job well done today. Mucho gusto!